1212 Radio Culture. Yes, indeed. Now we bring you the thing. What thing? Yes, indeed. Looks like we're springing this one on you, but yes, it's actually going to be a feature on this network. Reasoning on the groundation level. No. Today we're tackling one very interesting topic. African people. Did we ever speak one language? Not to the best of my knowledge. But however, Africa used to connect as a continent. How did we do that? And then further down the line, through slavery and colonialism and colonization and all of that thing there, Africa got further compartmentalized into different languages, not even our own. But today, in this modern era, how are Africans connecting? How do we get beyond that language factor and connect as African people for African unity? On the line right now, I have my beloved brethren, 7FIRESIDE, reaching us from the west side. Where you say, brethren?
Man, salute you, man. Give thanks for the invite. It's an honor to be here, brethren. So yeah, just let's start, man.
Yes.
Can't wait to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear yours. Even though I have to start with mentioning that you actually shared a document with me that completely swept me off my feet, and I have not been able to sleep since I saw that document because it's a lot to read.
Interesting.
It's a lot to read, and
True.
Yeah, I'm trying.
I gave you only one day to read all of that, right?
Yeah, Jesus, man.
It's a lot.
But let's start the discussion this way. Yeah. What is the primary problem? Why do we need
the line is breaking up. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
The line is breaking a little bit. I don't know what's going on every now and then, so I'll probably be asking you again and again, what did you just say?
That's fine.
But I'm sure, I hope it clears up. Yeah. So the thing they ask me, say, what you what?
What's the issue here? What's the issue here? What are we actually talking about?
Okay. So this is just my take, and I'm sure you have a different take. I'm sure other people have more, interesting takes too, so all of us together, right?
Yep.
Working together. So the initial point you made when you're opening this conversation up was about how do we used to communicate, right?
Yes.
Language wise, and then
yes.
How they came and interrupted they interfered with us. It's fractured us a lot more. Totally on that point with you. So I can't wait to hear you out. I wanted to hear you develop that point a little bit, but please today let's have another conversation, right?
Absolutely.
Don't speak as much, please.
Absolutely. Okay. So
you have a lot of experience and interaction and all that. So you interact with a lot of like real-time reasoning in terms of these things. You observe a lot of things. So back to the thing in terms of the problem or the issue we're trying to tackle here is I think there are some assumptions that we make about language, right? That have to be tossed, like thrown away, or at least modified.
Rethought, yes.
Yes. So I think that like the book the document I sent you, it was like a bunch of essays co-edited by what's the man named McConey? His last name is McConey, right? And the other gentleman is Pennycook, right? And a bunch of essays from different parts of the world, Yeah, one point you're making, I'm sure you'd have something to say on that, is the concept of language itself is imposed on us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I could go further. We could get into this later. We can get into the idea of culture itself is an imposed idea. It's a Eurocentric concept that we've internalized through our education, exposure to media. Our idea of language, culture, tradition, all these things are Eurocentric. Let's just start from this fact, right? Which is hard for us to take because, oh man, I'm doing my Ghanaian culture.
Yeah. But that's really the discussion we need to have. You know, we really need to rethink things.
Absolutely. So the content of what we're doing may be ours, right? It may be, we wear the kente cloth, we dance this way, we play our music this way, right? Mm-hmm. But the framework is basically European.
How so, though? How so?
Okay, so one point Pennycook, Marconi and Pennycook making that I think is crucial. And Pennycook in particular makes a point. Both of them are making a point about a meta-discursive regime, right? They're looking at language as we have come to know it, right? Okay, so first I was trying to distinguish a concept from the content. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Like right now, you have a concept for your show, right? Yep. This is the framework, and then you put stuff in it. The content is, the topics you choose, the way you interact with people, things like that. Yep. But the framework is what's guiding you. Yeah. The logic of the framework is the law that we must abide by, or else the thing is not what you want it to be. It's the same with language as we know it now, right? As we know it through our education and all that, right? Yeah. It is an imposed idea based on basically European colonialism, because there are people in Europe themselves who have issues with it or have had issues with it. I'm sure people still do, because there's a book by Englishmen, two Englishmen, I think. There's Ranger and I've forgotten the other guys. Ranger wrote an essay in that book on Africa's tradition in Africa, right? And the whole book is arguing that our understanding of tradition is also European. And their understanding of tradition was based on the idea of them colonizing the world, imperializing the world, right? So that's
a very interesting that's a very interesting take, because as an example, right, I've been having this thought, with myself about the idea of carrying chiefs in palanquins, for instance. Did we ever do that as a people? Why is it part of our culture now? Right? And that, I think, is a great example of what you're just describing, because the idea of carrying important people, so to speak, in sedan chairs or whatever, and carrying them around was something that was brought to us by the slavers, right? So they would force us to carry them in all those things. And now when they left, that has become part of our culture. We carry chiefs in palanquins.
Interesting.
How on earth do we use Holland schnapps as the medium for praying to our ancestors? Where does that come from?
That is a poignant point you're making. And you know what? We used to use water, right? Now somebody just argue, it's just libation. This is our tradition, it's libation. No, but
Nana, I know of places where they would even use things like urine when they were angry with their gods. Libation takes different forms. Libations.
Nana, thank you for sharing some of these things.
Yes. There are times when you are praying, that relationships Africans have with their gods, with their deities, with their whatever. It's different from what other people may, Africans may express anger at their gods if their gods don't deliver, right? And some of the times what they would do is they would use things like urine to pour the libation to express that anger in certain parts of Africa.
Communicating still.
However, what the point I'm making here is that it's not just even water, it's just like we had a whole range of things. Holland schnapps was never one of them.
Thank you. Thank you. And I mean, we can just add immediately. Let's just think color and snaps. Dutch wax. It's the
Exactly. It's the fabric.
The women's cover and slate.
Yes.
Right?
How is that?
And even the cover and slate. If you ask yourself, did you think about Obias and for them they were wearing cover and slate? You know?
Serious question.
Yeah, you see, we start the history from midway and we say this is us. You know, we should just stop that kind of thing. You know, and this conversation is important because it gets us to think about what is culture. And culture is a very dynamic thing. Like we're saying the other day, back to Obaya, if she shows up right now and she sees us walking around using cell phones, right? And she's gonna be a purist. She'll be like, why are these fools talking to themselves? Right?
Yes.
And that's a wrong approach because culture is dynamic, right? Things that are happening around you, you pick up and all that.
Yes.
You know, but to be clear in our mind that is what culture is versus mixing up tradition and customs with culture. You know, like Fernando say, you know, if you try to substitute one for the other, customs will kind of like almost arrest culture, right? So right now, over where you're at, I don't know what you're wearing, but I don't think it's natural fibers all the way, right? Yeah, but let's say 500 years ago, we'll be wearing stuff that will be mostly natural fibers, right? Hand woven stuff and all that, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, today someone will wear a boo or something, you know, it's made of, you know, mass-produced fabrics in a factory. Maybe artificial fabric stolen. Yeah.
That said, though. Yeah, sorry about that. Finish your thoughts.
And that would be presented as Ghanaian culture.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with that, right? But we should all be aware that it's being influenced by what's happening now, right? We can talk into details as far as, you know, why is it so and all that, you know, but I'm just trying to say that culture, we pick up things, and that's something we got to accept, right? Because we accept that, we become clearer about where did something begin. Right, I did know kind of about schnapps now, you know. Hey, serious thing. Radio, you know, culture. A lot of things we do, even the food we eat, what we call our food. Right, let's be serious about it. Some of them be survival foods where, if you look closely, maybe we start to pick those foods up during slavery times when we all had to pick up and run every time. So you need the stuff where you could preserve for a long time.
That's deep. Like what though?
You know what I mean? I mean, let's go down the list, man.
Yeah.
Kinky.
Gary.
Gary
is the first thing that came to my mind, though. Gary's the very first thing that came to my mind when you said that.
Yeah, you know, and things like that. There's so many things we became after we got interfered with. You know, just remember that by the time we were born, right? Like what? Late 20th century, right? Let's put it that way, right? Yeah. We had been interacting with these guys for like what? 200. They started showing up around the 15th century.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I mean, pano, right?
Yes.
It's a Portuguese word.
Yes.
Now we've
let's
use the word Ghanaian.
Umpua is another one. Asopatse, you know. Yes.
Thank you. And then someone will tell you if you don't speak like that, if you don't use those words, you are the one that's lost track. You're not Ghanaian enough. You're not African enough.
Yes.
But if you forget that the thing you're defending, it's not yours.
Pick that from somewhere. That's interesting.
You know,
this is very deep.
You know, it's not bad for us to be aware of where it started, where it came from. You know, so we don't sort of like cathedralize certain things too much. You know.
That said though, 7. I want us to look at, let's start from, because I'm sure certain people may be confused about the whole idea that culture itself, which is defined as the way of life of a people, could be something that could be imbibed from another, you know, group of people or whatever. Bring it down for us. Are you saying that our very way of life, including all the things that you referred to earlier, the kitty dancing and all of those things, were influenced?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't there. Let's say we're traveling people, right? I mean, Sheikh Anta Diop and all these people have talked about how we moved around. There's so many things that show that nobody was created in Ghana, right? There was a time when people moved to Ghana, right?
Yeah.
The original people of Ghana, if you say that, it's okay, people who came there after the fact, right?
Yeah.
There'll be migrations across the continent, right? And we've settled in different parts of the country. We've always moved. In the process of moving, you pick up stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, like you've traveled a little bit, right? I mean, quite a bit. You've been in Australia, right?
Yeah.
And then I know any other place. Yeah, but I've heard you talk about Nigeria. That little bit of time you did in Nigeria,
Yes.
I'm sure did something to
Yes.
you,
Yes.
to your makeup, your psychological makeup, and
Absolutely.
maybe some ways you speak, you say certain things. Your life in New York City, right?
Yep.
You're traveling around, going to Ghana from here and coming back here. It's another thing that's happening. You know,
Yeah.
Texas right now. There are things that are happening there that are gonna affect the way you pick up. You may pick up some even vocabulary or ways of saying certain things, or maybe even ways of understanding certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these things are real. So the same way, like the kete dancing or whatever we do, things we do, it's likely that maybe those original forms were there, the seed of it was there, the essence of it was there.
Mm-hmm.
And then while you're traveling, or while you're going through some experiences, or when some other travelers come and settle among your people, they introduce something and you say, oh man, this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Or it resonates. Or it could be so many different reasons. Sometimes it could be just pure entertainment. A lot of times it's a sacred thing, tied in there. Maybe not. There's so many reasons why people affect things, right?
So let me ask you, is it reversal? Is it reversible, I should say? Is it reversible?
Okay.
Is it something that could also be passed from us as a people to another culture, for instance? Can we also therefore claim that something that the English people are doing, for instance, was as a result of their interaction with us?
Absolutely. After just a bit, sometimes we don't see it, because they always have, back to the conceptual framework we're using, everything that you're doing looks like it's so mighty and it's so wonderful and they've done this and that. But even the fact of resistance, which to me is at the center of what we're doing now, what both of us are doing right now, this moment. You know what I mean? I don't like the word resistance because I think resistance presupposes that they have to remain in that state and we just kind of give them some pushback, right? Mm-hmm. I believe in obliterating whatever they represent, including their material existence, if we want to get past this. Yeah. You see what I mean? Yeah. It may sound extreme, but that's the thing, because resistance just means that you're going to be there and what they are is what they've been doing to us. Yeah, so we're just giving them pushback and let them still be there. They'll just come back and mess with us. They mess with us today.
Find new ways of doing it too.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They get our own people to do it and all that. Yeah, but the thing is, yes, we influence them, resisting them, fighting them, and all that in different ways. With armed, say armed warfare, and scholarly warfare, whatever, has influenced their ways of doing things. They've learned a lot by interacting with us. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that. It looks like they got their plan together. They don't have no plan. What's the good? They're making up stuff as they go. Fuck them. You know what I mean? I hate to say that, but it's true. They're pretending that they got their act together. They don't. They're making up stuff all the way. You know what I mean? Like some things they do, it looks like, oh, they figured it out. I'm just repeating myself. It's an example that comes to mind. Like they speak confidently about certain things that you're clueless about. And that we can tie to the nature of discourse too. Right? The nature of discourse is such that it's like I'm on your show right now and I'm talking, right? I can feel so good that I'm putting out information that I can start tripping without knowing. You know what I mean? Yeah, it happens a lot. I'm sure you've interacted with some of us and you've noticed that.
That's
We're
deep.
just trying to say, hey, I am this person. I know this.
Yes.
Anything. I don't want to curse again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The thing is that right now, a computer knows more than us. So for me to have information is nothing. It's what I'm doing with it.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Yes. But those are some of the things. The nature of discourse is such that You know, we put so much into someone seeming to have information. So we look at the West, that's like they have information. They got their act together. They got this. So we don't raise the question you're raising. Where did Joseph would say, tell me where you get it? You know, not just in terms of money, though. All of these things. Not just the gold you stole, not just your wealth, not just the good ideas that kind of deepen your culture or give you a sense of, you know, your bearings in the world, but what you learn even in terms of just interacting with us. They lost their minds when they met us, man. They realized that they didn't have anything to work with. So they had to go crazy and started doing some kind of, you know, idiotic stuff. You know what I mean? But yeah, let's stay on track with you, man.
All right.
I want you to guide the conversation. But tell me what you think, though. I mean, what I said.
I'm tracking with you. I'm tracking with you all the way, and so far, I'm at a point where I just want to backtrack a little bit to the influences, right? How you know cultures influence each other and all that, and give even further examples within our sub-region. Okay, but hopefully I can maybe that will guide my question at the end of it. But check this out. Have you considered where the word Chale comes from? Ghanaians.
I have, but I never know for sure. I'd love to hear what you have. What have you found?
I would like to hear you first.
I never came to any conclusion. I don't hear Nigerians do that. Do they do Chale?
Yeah, because Ghanaians are the only people who are called Chale worldwide. Like my friends in New York call me Chale. You know what I'm saying? Like because they know Chale, they know that's how we call each other. But where did that come from? Is it Charlie? Like I've heard people suggest that back in the day they would call the boys, like you know, they would send our fathers and stuff around when they were playing their crickets and stuff, and send them to go catch the ball, whatnot, and then they'll call them Charlie. Hey, Charlie, go get the ball. Cause so every African looked the same to them, so they were all Charlie, right?
Absolutely.
I've heard that, but I'm going to challenge that.
Go ahead.
I call it a hypothesis because it's never been proven. So I'm going to challenge that a bit. I think that it comes from the Nigerian word jare.
Okay.
Jare.
Okay.
Because every time I hear the word jare used, it fits perfectly with when you could use Chale.
Okay.
Right? Now check this out. You know, Ghanaians used to travel to Nigeria. A lot. Especially around the 80s. Now, what my challenge is I would like to find out if the term Chale was in use before that 80s era. If that was so,
I think it was.
Because
I remember some music from before that time where I remember the lyrics in there had Chalelelele or something in there.
Yeah, but Chalelelele is different from Chale though.
No, they were vibing on the Chale.
Oh, okay.
That's why I picked them. But I don't want to just because.
No, that's interesting because it's part of the research. I'm trying to. You know,
I can agree. I can see the possibility of what you're saying because let's remember that people from Ghana and people from Nigeria have been interacting a lot
for the longest while
and during the colonial experience.
Remember our culture, so-called culture, our traditions are very similar also.
Thank you. And then we get Lagos town in Ghana, right?
Yeah.
We get so many things in. I have a brethren here. You say uncle, they live some part of Ghana. Where say they've been Nigerians. They lived there for a long time before they come back to Nigeria, And this brethren, he'd be elder now, where he say, the uncle has spent a lot of time in Ghana, lived like a Ghanaian. And he came there when he was a child in Nigeria, and these things, they happen,
But Seven, did you notice? I don't know, but I did notice growing up that every town that I lived in had a Mamia Lata store.
Thank you.
A store that was run by, and I don't know why. Maybe they used a woman to front the stores, but they always were women.
And let's also remember that the way we see women is not how these people over here see women. You know what I mean? I mean, really. That whole idea of we Ghanaians, we beat up our wives and all that is a colonial mentality. We can discuss that too.
Yes.
The idea of dominating a woman is stupid in certain traditional settings, right? Because women run things, man.
Absolutely.
For the most part.
Absolutely.
Look at it. Look at the market. Look at the things where they happen. You know, that's why, man. This conversation we're having.
Fire.
You know,
for the very fact that the king, who is the ultimate authority, cannot be king until he is passed by the queen mother.
Thank you.
What does that say?
That point is salient. That point.
It's a she who is the kingmaker. That she is the kingmaker.
She decides who's.
She decides who's king.
Thank you. You know this Ayabi Yomo. You know when there's an issue, Ayabi Yomo, right?
Yes. 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 Because wisdom is attributed to the woman. Ayabi Yomo. Let's go ask the old lady.
Thank you. Naya Bingi.
Yes.
It's a woman movement.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So many things where we take seriously about this thing. You know. You know, like I was thinking about how women, men, right? Discourse was invented by white people. White is a product of white culture. European, you know, it's like supposed to like feed the European self of sense, right? Sense of self. That is, you know, a white male dominated world, you know, white dominated world and all that kind of thing, right? Okay. Now we can say we're Africans, we're black, we're all that and all that. But we have some purchase in that through the colonial experience, right? That's why some people in Ghana, males in Ghana, can stand up and feel like they're superior to women. A lot of things have happened that made us think that we come first. Like what is it? We have to actually campaign for, you know, get a girl child to go to school and all that. I know they had campaigns like that in Ghana, right?
Yeah.
They still have them, right?
They did before.
You know,
I don't know if they still do.
Get your girl child to go to school. It's because we just assume that it's about men, right?
Yeah.
Now, big mistake. But the thing is that because we have purchased in discourse, which I see as a prison, conceptual prison, the way we think. You know, we're talking about how let's think of language as a conceptual framework. Like I was trying to allude to your show versus the content, right? I can speak all the pidgin and all the tree I go if you speak, right? But it's still within discourse if I'm not mindful of the fact that it is in discourse. If I'm aware of it, I'll subvert it. I will profane it. We have to violate it. We have to perform some violence against it. We have to, you know what I mean?
Yes, indeed.
Or if we're just we're just being policed by our own thoughts. Now, I've been talking to my brother in New York City. Maybe you know him. We've been talking about the kind of language that some sisters in like Nima, Choco and things they use, right? When they vex.
I can only imagine some of those.
I want to throw one out there right now, the ear. Radio. And just speak with culture. Right? They can say, man, whoever you are, they can say it to you.
You don't know.
Right. Because they are not bound to.
You know what's interesting? You know what's interesting though is the Equiapim one. Because they will be respectful about it. Me pau Chelsea. Me pau Chelsea. We are beer. 7FIRESIDE. Maybe collect some quick guy like go right back 7. Back in like 1 minute. Yeah, man. All right, we're giving thanks to the Duck Palm people. Duck Palm. Duck Palm is a new app that allows you to contact your doctor without having to make the trip to the office. You live in Ghana, you need this app. You know why? Because the doctor to patient ratio is really low. And a lot of people have issues with waiting at the reception or waiting at the, whatever you call that place where the patients day. Sorry about that. And basically, a lot of people just don't get the health care that they need. DuckPalm is here to solve that. Download the DuckPalm app from Google Play Store or the App Store. Through that, you can get to see a doctor whenever you need one. We're also supported by JuPay. JuPay is the fastest way to send money to Ghana. Download the JuPay app, use it. When you send the money, remember, use the promo code GHNewsNow, GHNEWSNOW. Please do that for us. Also, by Royal Omnical Services. Royal Omnical Services is your one-stop shop for everything real estate in Ghana. Thinking of building your dream home, thinking of just getting a home in Ghana, thinking of investing in real estate in Ghana, speak with them. Royal Omnical Properties. And also by Threadlocks Dreadwear. We thank you very much. Now back on the line with the man Carl 7FIRESIDE. Fire.
Good thanks, Brother.
Every time. So
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now let's centralize the vibe a bit. Pidgenizing the narrative. That's how I chose to title the discussion today. Pidgenizing the narrative. To me, what that means is that we're trying to find a common language, and language doesn't necessarily mean words, but language here would mean a mode of communication for African people to connect properly, rather than having to borrow a foreign source as our land, or as what you call it, perimeter for discussion. I mean, now, what do you think about that?
I agree. It's just like I want to tweak it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're looking at language, Pidgin as something that pulls us together, right?
Yeah.
I like to think of Pidgin as something that just happens organically with no particular goal in mind. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when Nigerians were creating the Pidgin in Nigeria, they were not necessarily saying we do it so we can communicate with people in Ghana.
Yes.
It was as a result of the experience.
A natural occurrence.
They created some context where they're going to speak that English thing, but they're going to fill it with their own ways of speaking, right?
Yep.
And the same thing happened reflexively in Ghana. Same thing happens with Patois and
Jamaica,
the West.
Yeah.
The French people, even in Togo, French, Francophone Africa, they all have their own what we call Pidgin,
yes,
or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, it just happens organically before we can think about the outcome. I like to think about what I'm interested in is what is the real situation? What's the problem? I'm not too in a hurry to think about solutions. Personally, that's my take, because I think it will come when we understand the problem. Instinctively, we will see the solution. Like they say, each question has its answer inbuilt, right? So if we can really get to come to terms with a problem, it's almost like the answer is sitting in there. But most of the time, we've come to a kind of educational system, like when you write an essay, right? Let's say introduction, right? So you state the problem or whatever you want to deal with. Then the chunk of it, you're arguing, whatever. And then quick, 1 page or something. What's the solution? Right? You haven't even finished thinking about a thing. But to get a good grade, we do it and get our A's, right? 100%, whatever, 10 over 10, whatever. And you think you're doing such a great job, but you don't understand the problem. And up to now, I go through that talking to brethren. Brethren are A's and sistrins. When you start talking about somebody, the first thing, what's the solution? We're not even finished looking at what the real problem is.
Yes.
So what are you gonna do? You're gonna either, let's face it, and enough respect to the man Kwame Nkrumah,
Yep.
So let's remember that he didn't have the benefit of hindsight that we have now, right?
Yes.
But it's the notion of, let's say, United States of Africa. It's just a replication of the United States of America. You forget totally that what made that possible is different than what Africa is.
Yes.
We have these
different goals,
empires and kingdoms. Like Lester said, these nations came into independence in different ways.
Yes.
But in the U.S., it was uniform. They all got English. They all have they took the land over from the Native Americans, and they're just doing their thing here. It's easy to just say, this is how we are out of this. This is the blueprint. And also, the United States is the only Western nation power that was built basically on written code. You know what I mean? Like the French, the British, the old Europe, old world, they had oral traditions before they started doing the written traditions. right?
Yeah.
Even England is still maintaining that, right?
Yep.
Like they balance with that, but they've come, since the printing press was invented, they've come into that. But America came into being after the printing press was invented. Printing press was invented when late 15th century, right?
Yeah.
Everything about America is rules and all that. It's written down. It's ways of doing things is written, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy to say this is who we are. Like McLuhan said, in America, you can just see that everything leads to one point, and it's easy, it's clear to tell, right? But it's not that clear when we look at Europe or Africa.
Yes.
You see, so to get up and say United States of Africa sounds great and it's wonderful. I love the vision. But what I think is that instead of saying Nkrumah was wrong, we have to just say, okay, how do we conceptualize it based on our reality? Because attempts have been made, right? But you can't tell me to just, let me tell you, man, if you go tell somebody where either live for some kingdom, right, for Sokoto or something, say suddenly right now, look at the wars, the Delta, Niger Delta thing. Look at the Biafra war. They're like, no, we never signed up for this. We don't want to be part of this thing. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So just imagine you go tell somebody where you're getting king for in place that they do their thing next to Sunday. There's a new idea that the British government created this thing. And now we should belong to it. And now we're all going to be governed by it. And then we're all going to be governed by someone who's ruler of all of us. No, it's confusing. Forget about it.
It is a very hard sell, to be honest with you. And the issue of the external pressure, I know you definitely get to that as well. But that's also one thing that will also influence that, because apart from everything else that you are discussing right now, there's also a very big factor that is an interest that doesn't want to see that happen.
Oh, definitely. But you see, what I'm trying to say that maybe, if we just say what Nkrumah gave us is wonderful. Not just Nkrumah, there were a bunch of people who were thinking like that, right?
Yeah.
And let's remember Nkrumah was building on Garvey for the most part.
Yes.
Right? So people have given us these gems, right? I think it's dumb of us to just take it the way they presented it and try to make it work like that. They were speaking in their time based on the exposure, their understanding of the world. We have gone through a lot of things that have sort of like shaped our understanding of the world in another way, which let's see as complementary way, right? Not necessarily against what you're thinking. But we have to extend it. I was asking myself, if Nkrumah happened to be here right now, what would he be doing? What would he be saying? What would he be, you know what I mean? Versus, he said this in the 50s, so that's where it stops. Nkrumah was always evolving, I think, right? He didn't have much of a window to do all he did, but he was forward-looking. Now, the mistake we make when we start to read a lot, go to school a lot, and all, become experts in putting up signposts, that stop signs, like this is where we are, this is who we are, this is what Nkrumah did. Let's take it and do something with it. We do the same thing with our history. This is our culture, this is our history. And it was, man.
Yeah.
What else? What's tomorrow like?
Seven, one funny thing again that came to my mind, that comes to mind right now that you mentioned that again. I was in, I think it was the Cape Coast or the Elmina Castle, that I don't remember which one. I think it was the Cape Coast Castle. And then there's a tour guide in the castle who is saying that there's a god of some sort in the castle, which used to be there before slavery. Now, this god is still there, was there during slavery, supervised the cutting away of millions of children from that land, and is still there and is still demanding worship and sacrifice from people. So people who come there give tokens to buy schnapps to pour to this stupid god.
Okay.
What is this? And I was just about to drop an expletive too, my brother.
I know.
What is this?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what you're.
What exactly I'm saying is that we embrace that thing called culture so fucking blindly.
Oh yeah.
Without no questions asked.
It's tricky though. So let's say, like how some people say they don't believe in God because if God was real, like Nana Yankopon himself.
Yes.
I'm using our language, but generally the reason why a lot of people don't say they're agnostic or whatever is because they say God is supposed to be good, right? So how come we go through all this hell? So if we're going through hell, then God doesn't exist. So I think I see that similarly. The gods may be there, the gods may be doing things, I mean, they may be failing us, but it's
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. But my position on that is that a God that would fail his people for so long, definitely or probably is not worth too much considering like that. That's the type of God I think we should pour urine down to.
Now let's check this out. Has God failed us? Because Africa is not a pretty state at all.
Africa has success stories and a lot of messed up stories. So
but right now I talk to brethren in Ghana. I talk to my brethren in Ghana. Yeah. Right?
Yes.
And it's not pretty what the things these people committing suicide.
That's very true. But I don't think that we can blame.
The success stories for me don't mean a thing at all.
Well, you see fire.
Let me tell you why.
Yes.
Let me tell you, if someone has to go electrocute himself. When we're growing up, that thing wasn't happening.
Yes, right? Fire.
Like a lot of people committing
suicide. I completely agree.
Success stories, they're just abstract to me. I'm thinking about the lowest of the low, the most vulnerable.
Okay.
Right?
So
and it's desperate situation.
So this is what I mean though by success stories, right? Because for a continent that has been battered for all these centuries and still continues to stand and shine, I think that we cannot say that God, and I'm saying God because again we're using that general terminology, right? So if we're saying that, and I'm trying to respond to that question you posed earlier, has God failed Africa? I don't think anybody can say that because Africa has been able to stand. Look at Australia, for instance. They run roughshod over Australia. They took the entire continent. Aboriginal Australians are living on reservations, same as in America. That didn't happen in Africa. You see, everywhere they went, they took the land. It's only in Africa they could not take the land. So I cannot say that God has failed Africa in that sense. However, also one point that I also want to make is that the follies and the foibles of the politicians cannot be blamed on God or a God or the gods. They are greedy people who are in charge of the country right now. They are greedy people who have been in charge of the country for a very long time. They're greedy people who do not understand what governance is, only understand it to be positions where you occupy for self-aggrandizement, rather than to fill a spot and fulfill the needs of the people. So that is what the problem is over there, you know. So
I see what you mean. Yeah. Can I give the twist along? Finish your point.
No. Go through.
No, you're about to say soul. I want to listen. When you say soul.
No, well, I was just rounding up so you could take over. So you know that kind of actually makes it easier for me.
Yeah, so round it up. I just want to hear the thing you're saying.
Well, what I was saying is that we basically cannot say that Africa, by any stretch of the imagination, is a lost cause. I don't think Africa is a lost cause at all.
I don't see it that way at all.
And I think that Africa's greatest resource is people like you and I, who just have to spend time and energy to go through the discussions so people can really understand what the issues are, rather than, like you said earlier, jump to solutions when we don't even understand what the issues are.
Now, what keeps some of us going is that Ethiopian woman who's saying, if I choke or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, boy. You know what I mean? That's what keeps me going. That's my motto. So those are the people we need. People who are able to say, how with this whole framework of discourse that we've been given.
Yeah.
And we're going where we've never been. We're going where we're not allowed to go.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah, but back to the point about African leaders. Like, this conversation is going to be all over the place, but that's because it's centered around. See, this when we're talking about language, it's tied to everything.
Yes, basically. I realized that the subject was Pidgenizing, but then we're touching on everything.
Everything, and it's still tied to it.
It is. We're Pidgenizing the narrative. It's a narrative. It's not.
Absolutely. So, I was thinking about African leaders, right? Yeah, it's true to corrupt African leaders, but let's start from this place. As a Rastafari.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know, or you do know, I should throw around the words, you do know about the charges that were leveled against Slushy.
Yes.
Now, Slushy won nothing for himself. Mm-hmm. Right? Nothing. Right?
Yeah.
But people, and up to today, some people talk like that.
Yeah.
Oh, he was over there. The politicians are greedy. Fela had albums where he was dissing Slushy on it with the imagery.
I see.
Fela is a thoughtful, progressive African, right?
Yeah.
We bought into this narrative that I tell you, this is my position on this. Yeah, the hell with these corrupt politicians, but they're not we can remove all the corrupt politicians. Just listen to me in this moment, man.
Mm-hmm.
We can remove all of them, and we can put a zillion of people like you with integrity there, right? And we will face the same problems that we're facing.
Because it's not just integrity that's needed there, it's the integrity plus the experience that they come with.
Look at Slassy's Ethiopia, brethren.
Yeah.
People were suffering in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Slassy was not a happy man. Right?
Yeah.
And people will say it's because of bad governance. Some people, based on their westernized education, they say it's bad governance. That's why things are like this. I've heard some people even talk about, oh, yes, Slassy was a great guy, but he was not educated. You know, and things like that. You know what I mean? But it is not, that is not the problem.
7.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
So I get what you're saying entirely. However, I think that the Selassie example is not the standard for African leaders.
Okay.
Sadly, I get what you're saying, but the Haile Selassie example is not the standard. Yes, we can find a few examples that could fit-ish into that model, and I could mention a few names. Ish, yes, Ish.
No, I agree. I totally agree.
You know, and even today, you can mention names like Paul Kagame, who, look at somebody who comes out of, listen, not too long ago, we were watching movies, Hollywood movies, about the war in Rwanda. And now you have people wearing a jersey in the English Premier League that says, visit Rwanda. All under one man. What does that say? We cannot brush that under the carpet. That is exceptional leadership.
Okay.
That is exceptional leadership.
I appreciate the way you see it. You know,
absolutely.
But my take on it is this, and I stand corrected. There are people who are allowed to make their countries progress. And there are some people who are not allowed.
Yes.
Based on who you're rubbing wrong.
Yes.
I mean, you can say we're doing our own thing. We don't want Western interference. But if you stay in your lane, you'll be allowed.
Yes. Yes.
Rwanda don't have much of not strategically speaking, like economically and politically. Rwanda is not as strategic as, let's say, Ethiopia.
Yes.
Or Ghana.
Yes.
Or Nigeria. Right?
True.
Some places will not be left alone to prosper.
True.
Or to have their own way. But that's this Kagame, whatever he's doing, and we respect that, right? But I'm not looking at that. I don't want to look at that because Nkrumah was stopped in his tracks. Because Ghana has a strategic point of things, right? One way to put it this way, if Kagame starts going up against the West, like really going up against the West, this will happen.
See, but the thing is,
I don't really want to pay attention to that. Really, it doesn't really, personally. Okay, this is what I think, Brethren. The idea of the political, right?
Yeah.
It's also in question when we're talking about language. The idea of a nation state is also in question. The idea of economics is in question. If we're going to bring up culture, tradition, language, we're going to have to address all of these things.
Yes.
Philosophy, right?
Yeah. But you know,
political. You're saying something?
No. Finish.
I'm saying the idea of the political that we're dealing with, right, is received. And if you don't mess with it, you're left alone.
Yeah.
Kwame Nkrumah was a disruptor.
Yes.
If you read CIA memoranda or reports, not just CIA, like U.S. State Department, on Kwame Nkrumah's behavior and quotes.
Yeah.
They were like, man, what the hell is this guy doing? What's he about, man? What's he doing? I don't think they'll say that about Kagame.
I get that point completely, but I'm also looking at it from the point of view of the people being comfortable. To me, that's the ultimate. The people having a standard of living that's respectful and respectable for human beings. Because 7FIRESIDE, truth be told, a lot of us actually don't even prefer to live on the continent because of how it's governed by people that we know we should not be acquiescing with, to say it in the very softest of terms. What I mean is this. You live in a country where you have access to good roads, good road networks, you have access to health, you have access to good drinking water, you have access to all of that. Versus you live in a country where somebody takes the money and stuffs it in the Cayman Islands, right? And invest it for their future generations. Screw everybody else. That's what we're talking about.
I feel you totally. I totally understand.
Because there's international politics. Yes, I absolutely get that, and I'm not shying away from that at all. And I'm on the same spot with you. You know what's interesting? I will send you this video to see. I bumped into this video of Idi Amin at the 1975, I think.
Him when you said carrying the chiefs, he got white folks to carry.
Yes. He said, "Hey, that's your culture. Let's repeat it here." But I was watching I was watching a press conference of him at the United Nations 1975 conference, and I'm like, this man is not given as much credit as he deserves. He's put out to be a buffoon. He's put out to be somebody who did not understand nothing. He's put out to be a comedian, somebody who was just making people laugh.
Discourse. That's the point we're trying to make about
if you go beyond his fake African Ugandan accent and listen to what he was saying, he was explicitly clear about what he wanted as a leader. And none of that I could fault, except that you were on a certain part of the aisle where you are stuck and you don't want to move. Otherwise, he sounded very articulate to me, albeit throwing in his funny stuff all the time, which I think is adorable.
Idiosyncrasies, right?
But
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and things like that make me feel like, okay, we need to rethink everything that we've ever taught. Everything.
I appreciate, but can I throw in something real quick?
Please do that.
Okay. Idi Amin in Uganda, people loved him.
Yes.
But it was for some people, it was a reign of terror.
Yeah.
If you went against them, he would deal with you rough.
Yeah.
Whoever you are, black, white, whatever. Kwame Nkrumah had a PDA in Ghana, right?
Yeah.
Kwame Nkrumah, when he became head of state, he was all for the workers, the unions, whatever, right?
Yeah.
They had certain projections about the cocoa thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what certain place, if you're a cocoa farmer, you're cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all that. And then the West started screwing up the whole with the price drop, price hike thing they're doing, messing up our economy because they decide what happens to our economies. And now he couldn't meet the projections that he had made.
Yeah.
And the workers started getting upset with him.
Yeah.
Right? By the time they were about to overthrow him, people were complaining that life was hard in Ghana. Of course, when they complain about, but I and I go laugh at that because we see things like essential commodities, sugar and what?
Milo and sardines.
Sardines, that's essential. But the point is that people would be, in terms of personal security, like young pioneers go report their parents.
Yeah.
And some brave people tell you straight up, like, I would report my parents if they're trying to subvert this African unity concept. I would. Some people will say that, right? Yeah. People have a legitimate reason to say, look, I'll report whoever. But that creates a kind of reign of terror. There's this PDA thing. We can fault in Nkrumah. Maybe not, because when Nkrumah had that JB Danko had died, he cried.
And Simon, who wouldn't have something like that after being shot at, after being bombed?
Thank you. Assassination attempts and all that.
Like every turn he took.
Thank you, my brother. So the thing, the whole idea about comfortable living, I want to suspend that too. I mean, it's beautiful, and I think that we're going for that. But it's never happened in Ethiopia. Never happened in Ghana. Never happened in South Africa. Never happened in the Congo. Let's think of the Congo, man. Think of the trauma that people go through in the Congo, and to start talking about the people have to. I think we're let's discuss the idea of a nation state itself, the nature of a nation state, right? It has no justifiable premise. There's a lot of scholarship on that. The idea of the modern nation state, right? It has no human. I mean, I'll just dash quickly. In the West, they're very corrupt politicians too.
Yes.
Because the nature of politics are the same kind of characters in Africa.
Yes,
here, in Sweden, in England,
everywhere.
But they've rocked the world enough that if those people steal whatever, they still have something to build the roads.
Basically,
it's not because they're more whatever, they have more
and
integrity.
also they have a system where it's harder to steal. Let's admit that.
But
they still do. They still do.
That makes them even more dangerous.
They still do. But imagine a situation where a politician spends money to go buy drugs or whatever, vaccines, whatever, from some source that they can't even disclose. And then they come back and they're still sitting in their office. That's what I'm talking about. It's a bit harder to do that type of nonsense in these other places that we talk about, right? Because like you said, America, for instance, is built on a code. So you follow the code. Over there is built on, okay, I'm the one. Even the way we think of our leaders is wrong. Because we think of the president as the father of the nation. No, he's not no father. There are lots of people who are much older than him, who are much smarter, wiser, whatever than him. He's the leader of the nation, not the father of the nation. And then all this in a year, and a year papa, all of that is nonsense. The way we treat our leaders is why they treat us the way they do.
It's interesting the way you're talking because I find it very refreshing, and I wish we could stick with it so you can because we're moving from topic to topic. I want us to be able to circle back, expand, and all that. So let's say how we see kings, right, in Africa. Lesson, father, right? Nkrumah was not 60 years old when he became head of state, but they called him Osajifo. There were people who were smarter. There were people, I'm sure he was in a position where maybe the first who say things like, man, we're smarter than this guy. We've been to better schools. We've been, whatever their criteria for smartness is, right? A lot of people thought Nkrumah was just a shoddy intellect, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of people calling someone a father of a nation, I don't think is a problem.
But that's another place where I would also draw another dichotomy, because Nkrumah's role in the nation Ghana is different from everybody else after him.
True, but how would know that while he was ruling?
Well, I'm not capable of answering for those people then. But right now, I'm saying that we know Kwame Nkrumah to be the father of the nation. After him, the current president is no father of no nation. He's not our father.
But at least you're creating room for a father.
Yes, right? Absolutely. And I know that Kwame Nkrumah is the father of the nation, no question. Just like in the West, they have their founding fathers and all of that. They don't shy or fly away from that. Same thing, we have ours. And I know people try to bring in all the bourgeois stuff. That's one discussion that can be had. To me, there's one founding father.
I'd love to hear what you got to say on that.
No, I think there's just one founding father for Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah. End of story.
Okay.
That's my take on it, period.
Okay. But I was just thinking of the idea that while someone is ruling, right, we have this maybe, okay, I just want to start from a place where maybe I'm sounding irresponsible here. Maybe I'm sounding anarchic a little bit. But like people, like for me, if someone says it's because of politicians that Africans are in this situation, I think that it's because we have an expectation that someone is put in a position to do certain things that's somehow gonna make things better for us or rectify it. That's like politicians' campaign, right? I know with the Ghanaian president right now, when he was campaigning, or their parties, all the parties, it's not just that. All parties come out and make promises. We're going to save you. They pose as fathers. We're going to do this for you. Messiahs, saviors, right? Very problematic. We have to have a different understanding of the political. That's what I'm trying to say. We're trying to expect something out of something that does not exist.
So,
you know what I mean?
So that said, though, also, I think that the point I'm really making is governance versus ruling.
Okay.
I think I'm going to crash it down into that, But before let me make this quick announcement. We're just crossing the 1 hour mark.
Okay.
The show was supposed to stay on the 1 hour, but I cannot for the life of me stop this discussion at this point. So I'm going to beg the producers to extend this to another 30 minutes, please. Make sure you communicate that with everybody on social media. We're extending the show by an extra 30 minutes, and we still have on the line 7FIRESIDE. So 7. Yes. I was saying though that we have politicians that you can actually pinpoint as doing things for, and I think it's normal because unless we're completely disregarding the role of leadership, otherwise there has to be some structure that governs how things work. Now, that said, we have rightfully or wrongfully, decided to use that system where every 4 years people go and vote. I think that is the worst decision we ever made. Because 4 years.
Can you tell me what you mean by that? That's very interesting.
No, it's exactly because you see, 4 years, and look at the amount of money that goes into the election. So that means for every 4 years, we're trying to raise that money again as a state to organize the election, and then as individuals who are trying to contest the election. Look at the current president in Ghana right now. Are we surprised that all the corruption is going on right now? I am not. You know why? Because he had been running for president for the longest while.
I know.
How many people have supported this man? How many people have contributed to his campaigns, both the ones he lost and the one he won? Now, if he's a loyal person and he wants to stay loyal to these people, who's he going to give the contracts to? If these people are corrupt and they're doing fucked up shit and he doesn't even agree with it, based on how much money they've put in his campaign, what is he going to say? So Fire, we know that can actually be the problem. I think that we need a rethink, and I've actually suggested some things which I've had holes punched in, so I'm a bit worried about putting it out there at this point, but I'll still share it. I've thought about.
I'd like us to talk about it.
Then let's I think this is the best platform, really. You and I. Let's think about this together.
Not the time.
I was thinking about what about Parliament as the National House of Chiefs, so that the chiefs form Parliament. I hate to call them chiefs, but let's just call them chiefs, just so we know what everybody means. Everyone knows what we mean. What if instead of somebody who just pops up somewhere and goes to school in America and goes somewhere and shows up and say, hey, I'm Dr. this and Dr. that, and I'm the MP for this area, and then they all flock after him. They don't even know who he is. What about if the people whose ancestors have lived on the land forever, whose duty it is to see that the land is developed, right? Whose duty it is to make sure that everything progresses. Those people are made into the constituency of thinkers that think about the land Ghana. So that yes, we have a system of choosing a leader, but for Parliament, we don't have this flock of how many hundred of people, but we have the representatives of the royal lands everywhere. Dagomba, Kokomba, Nanumba, everybody, Gan, Fanti. Even within the Fanti, we have the Kumfi, Bobor. All of these people, everybody bring that, and then they form the Parliament. We don't want that because we want a Parliament where people can speak English and could be as dumb as nails. We don't care. That's what I've put out. And I've had a few holes punched in here and there, but what do you think, Seven?
Man, you're onto something, man. You know me, I want to stay out of that. I see a lot of things in there, man. I see a lot of problems in there. But I still think we're still dealing with the same concept of the political.
Yes.
Which, back to the thing we're talking about, language and discourse, is governed by other factors. So if we're going to address this thing, we have to obliterate discourse as we know it, or saying system, right, of actually thought and behavior. And it actually, like, if we whatever. But look, the city is tied to the dollar. What happened to Western currency? Basically, it's the dollar now. It's dollar and pound, right? Yeah. What Babylon's money is doing is what's going to affect our money, whether we like it or not. Our economies are bound to what happens in the rest of the world. It's a real thing. You know what I mean? So, if that is a reality, then maybe we got to start asking ourselves, economics is not for us. The political is not for us. I believe more in the people who were struggling and saying, we don't care about making sense to these people. And I see that attitude reflected in someone like Idi Amin sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, we absolutely don't care if we don't make sense. This is what we're going to do. Unfortunately, we become experts in making sense using someone else's logic. So we're going to be in this state.
So my challenge there, though, is that if we don't have a clear-cut replacement for whatever we're seeking to reject, that could be a problem, don't you think?
It is, definitely. But what I'm thinking is this. Back to the thing. Have we gone through the problem? Are we clear about the problem? If we're clear about the problem, like I was saying earlier, the solution would be clear there too. It wouldn't take much effort to see that, if this is what is missing, then this is the thing. Or if this is where we go off, this is what on means, right? But if we're in a hurry to just say, this is it, and you've not assessed the problem in depth, see what really causes it, right? Like I'm saying, if I blame it on politicians, it's a short-term solution. It's a stopgap measure.
I don't think so. I don't think so, Seven, because they are in charge of how the continent is governed. They are in charge of selling resources to China, for instance, who would come and put machines that pump cyanide back into our water bodies. Chinese people cannot go over there and do that on their own. That's why the biggest problem is the politicians. Because if you have a strong system like Rwanda, and I'm going back to Rwanda, where you are kind of, scared to throw trash on the street. Do you remember the days of Akwesi Ajimai in Kumasi? And Kwantebisa in Accra and things like that. The very name, there are people who never saw Kwantebisa in their lives. But the name in Kwantebisa would tell you that I should not put trash on the streets. So I think a large part of it has to do with the politicians. Body language alone. Look at Jerry Rawlings. He would jump into the gutters and dig out trash.
Yes.
This is what I was saying when I was talking about the father of the nation, right?
And you made a point about governance and ruling.
Governance versus ruling. He doesn't think he's a ruler. He thinks he's governing. He thinks it's work that has to be done. He thinks that let's go and do it together. That's why he will take off his shirt to demonstrate the fact that it's work that has to be done. I'm not your king. Sure. I'm your leader.
Sure.
Versus somebody who comes and says, hey, whatever, and then the butter will melt in their mouths. That's what I mean by rulership. I mean ruling versus governorship.
Absolutely. So let me see. I agree with you when you're saying that thing about if politicians did better or if they understood these things, things would be different. Maybe just where I differ with you a little bit would be where I say politicians are a problem, not the problem. I would say discourse is the problem.
Okay.
Because let's put all the politicians aside, right? And let's talk about interactions with each other. Right?
Yep.
Man, the way we understand the world, it's the problem for the most part.
I agree with you, and that's probably why we also choose the politicians we choose.
Absolutely.
Because they're a big part of the problem. To be honest with you, they may be a problem, but they are a very big problem.
Absolutely. But just imagine that if we never put anything into that. I mean, to put it in a maybe an irresponsible way. Election time comes and nobody votes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things like that. I mean, it's not going to work that way. It's not pragmatic enough. Things are already in motion, so that's going to keep happening until some other. But I think we're not using our imagination enough. That's all. I think we're not thinking of we can. It looks like and this affects us in terms of art too. I think every time we're thinking about the political, I want to think about art together with it. Music.
Yeah.
And that's what I can talk about immediately, but we can extend it to all the visual,
art forms,
oral arts, whatever, right? We are bound to discourse so intimately But we become masters of that. We're the ones that are telling people what music is supposed to be. What we forget that the idea of music we have is Western. They just give the framework and they can fill it with African concepts. And you think you're doing some great, I think I'm doing some great African music, right? But the framework is Western.
Are you saying that goes for every kind of music in Ghana right now?
No, not every kind of music, of course. But it's the outliers.
Okay.
Who are either oblivious to music or, I mean, when you say the word music right now to most people, the first thing they'll ask, like if I go to a place right now and they say, "Oh, you play music?" I say, "Yeah." First thing someone's going to say, "What genre?"
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Up to now, people I'm running into who always want to try to fit me in. Is it reggae? Even after you told them that you don't care for genres.
Yeah.
When you do something, they'll try to attach it to some genre. It's because we worship discourse. Discourse is our God Almighty. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's very sickening if we want to open a new door. We're actually, I feel that we're doing the younger generation a huge disservice. Because there are people like me, and I think you, who will sit in music class and say, "No, you're teaching me another culture. I don't want to listen to you. This quaver thing you're talking about, semi-quaver, all notes that
you sound like we're in music class with me in St. Peter's Secondary School."
Oh man, I never liked music class. I was talking to my brother Ben Charlie. He said he too. He noticed that anytime I reach music lessons time, I'm out for no one go. Music class.
I couldn't get in the school band because I didn't do well in music as a subject.
And look at you. Look at the music you play, Bridget. You see what I'm saying?
There you go.
But it's because you refuse to accept the culture that did not make sense. It's a culture they're teaching us. They're teaching us.
Can I tell you something? Discourse. This may be embarrassing because it may not be very intelligent to say, but that same thing goes for math for me.
Math, science, geography, medicine, chemistry classes. I don't want to know what oscillation is, the physics class or whatever, because it sounds odd to me. Australopithecus. This might be someone where they come from a place where they say something, then you tell them that.
How are you going to tell me from point A to B and then from point B to C is the same as from point A direct to C? How on earth are you going to tell me that unless you pass through some theory that I have to bring my mind to accept?
And you know
except that my virgin mind is telling me that if I and you are going to Kumasi and you decide to go to Suhum first before you go to Kumasi and I go direct to Kumasi, I should get there before you. I'm just saying.
Part is, while you're thinking about this, there's some brother or sister in the class who's just lapping it up.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so they'll say he's a good student.
Intelligent.
A good student. There are people who are over in this country, they're in special ed right now, right? A lot of people are in special ed. Because they're too intelligent. They're asking questions and also they're not smart. You come to them and you tell them something.
Sadly.
He'll be sitting there and say, this doesn't make sense. I don't care for education. That's what they'll say.
Sadly.
Because we are buying into a culture that is not ours. Look at IQ tests. We've only lately where they started realizing it's culturally biased. You're intelligent because you understand Western values. That's what basically it is. So this is just universal values. And this is a thing we need to talk about seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's the idea of the political is not ours. The idea of economics is not ours.
So I want you to define the political in that sense, though, because I think that the political is just representative of leadership. Are you saying that this type of political is what we don't need? Or are you saying that we just don't need the framework of leadership, period?
No. I'm not saying we got Selassie, man, Rastafari. So we know that we need leadership. And we take that seriously. We know that. Right. So, but what I'm trying to say is that Selassie was an outsider to the political. If you look at him closely, I mean, we get translations of the speeches, and so we get a certain kind of sense that we know clearly what he's saying. But if we can locate him outside of the stream of the political, maybe we'll interpret some of the things he's saying a little differently. You know what I mean? For me, Selassie had an advantage because he didn't spend too much time in these schools.
Yeah.
And he has his thing too. You know what I mean? He had something going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's tapping into certain things that allows him to operate that way. I don't think there's it, man. You know that Johnny Herrera was president, or was ruler of, let me say, head of state of Tanzania. There were people complain. Herrera, I think, was blameless, in my view, right?
Yeah.
But if you read some documents about the situation in Tanzania, the people are complaining that we have bad governance here.
That's
Because-
what, and this ties in right with the point you were making earlier, right? Because that's what I've come to notice. Zimbabwe and Mugabe and all of that. And I had a colleague that I used to work with in this TV station from Zimbabwe, and I would be all waxing lyrical about Mugabe every now and then, and how he's standing up for African people, and he would want to strangle the living daylights out of me.
Absolutely.
Why? Because his family had directly suffered some type of, harassment under Mugabe, right? So
Nyerere had to do relocation of people to build something, just like how the building.
There you go.
Yes, and it affects some people in a way that is not necessarily understood on that level, right?
Yes.
So if the compensation is not satisfactory, which is always very subjective, right?
Yes.
To be satisfied,
yes,
they can just say we don't like this guy. But I've heard people in the
basically,
like that.
And it's whoever touts the horn loudest, right? Because it's and we know how the media works. It could be because some media irresponsible. Let's bring it to Ghana. 7FIRESIDE. I've recently learned about a system that the former president was trying to introduce for the people in the north, right? To help them in their agriculture and whatnot. Now, during that time when that thing was introduced, it was said to be something about guinea fowls flying to Burkina Faso or something stupid like that. Now, a lot of people latched onto that without even knowing the details, including myself. Until recently, when I got to find out what that was all about and realized that this was actually a plan for setting up an agricultural system to help the people in the north, right?
Oh, yeah.
That hadn't even started.
And that's crucial because the north is always left out of the picture.
Every time. And remember, the former president is from the north, right?
Yeah.
And so he knows firsthand what's going on there. So I'm sure he had studied what the people needed, and the people didn't give him the chance. They said, "Oh, I confirm we took on Burkina Faso," and then the people latched on that and said, "Oh, he was corrupt, whatnot." So that it just has to take somebody who doesn't like something about what you're doing, and then it will just be like, But that said, also, we still have to keep fire to the feet of the politicians because some of them are as corrupt.
Definitely, and I see that you're what I've seen some of your work, and I see that you're on it. That's why I want to say some of the things I'm saying, but you made me say it. You're really doing it.
It's funny you said that.
And I think it's important.
I was having a discussion with Ochami Kwabi, right? And Ochami Kwabi was like, me personally, when I'm playing music, when I'm releasing an album, I play 2 songs for my family. I play 1 song for myself. I play 2 songs for my fans, whatnot. But I noticed that every time you sing, it's about blasting politicians. Like, where the money there? Like, straight up. It's because fire. I think that, and now I'm beginning to agree with you that they may not be the entire problem, but I think a lot of the other minor problems are still connected to them. Because if they offer good leadership, as the leader, you are at the steer. So if you have,
make it hard for them.
Yes.
But also, let's remember that, like, right now you're running the station, you're running the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's 2 positions I could take: a supportive position. So
Yes.
even when I'm critical of some things you're doing, the idea is that how do we put energy into it
Yes.
and support.
Yes.
And then there could be another one that's like, oh, look what he said.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh gosh.
Yes. And that happens a lot. Like
Oh
you
gosh.
said about
Oh
about
gosh.
and all that. Yeah. A lot of things have got to do with that. Where if somebody's in a position to do something, when you're another one doing, right now, as you're doing your show right now, it's easy for me to come around and say, oh, you should be doing this, you should do it. And then you ask me, do you have a radio station? Or do you have a TV station? Are you running it? And I'll say, no. But I'll be telling you things like, oh, you can do this, you can do that. Because I'm not the one doing the thing.
Yeah.
It's easy. I'm sure you go through that at home with friends, interacting with people where when they're the ones with it, when you are the one with your hand on the thing doing it, it's easier for someone to say, why don't you do it better? It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, but when the roles are flipped, you realize that, it's really, really.
I agree with you, except that for the politicians, it's not a radio station. This one, I have set up the thing with the support of my team. We're running it. You have a choice.
I know what you mean.
To support it or not. With the politicians, we have given the destiny of the entire nation to you. In a lot of cases, we didn't even agree with you, but some other people that you rallied together came to vote for you and put you in the spot.
Okay, so
into a different
Let's stop it right there. Let's stop it right there. When you say this thing about democracy or electoral democracy, right?
Yes.
Problematic already. Tied to the idea of the political, I'm saying there's a problem. Now, I didn't vote for this guy because I have a problem with him. But now he's president.
Yes.
And I still don't agree with his politics at all.
Yes.
I mean, and he's got to be president.
Yes. That
you
sucks.
know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm not convinced that he's supposed to be the one. Now,
yes.
in traditional settings, it's like if, let's say, this one is chosen to be Asante here, and there are people who have this entrenched vibe that, nah, we don't want him. After a certain point, you just have to curb it, because this guy's going to be there for a lifetime. You got to curb it, or you got to leave town, or you got to just, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Somehow. The kind of thing we're doing, which is basically based on the Western form of government, right? So let's say that thing about how democracy may not be that good for some people. You know what I mean? Just what you said in another way earlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're suggesting the House of Chiefs thing. So I just think that sometimes, back to the thing, my point about this whole language discourse thing, we bought into a belief system that is against us. And if we can tweak things, we can move pieces around within that framework, but it's not going to fix it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we really want to fix it, if we're talking about radical, if we want to be radical, somebody like David Marietta said, if you want to be radical, you have to go up against the idea of the political. I mean, he's not the only one that's putting that idea out there. We've just taken for granted that the idea of the political is just universal. It is not. I can sit here and explain it to you about. Maybe we can sit back. Maybe when we vibe every now and then, we can just whatever you find and throw at me. I can share what I have with you. Let's see. What is this idea of the political that we have? What is this idea of economics that we have? That we go to school and learn political science and learn economics, and we think that's going to come and help us fix this problem? No.
Yes.
No.
I agree with you, and I think that for a long time, our problem has also been that we seem to be looking for a solution at the same spot where we haven't found one for hundreds of years. And that's where we keep going to look for solutions. But anyways.
A lot of times we don't understand the problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's easy to point a finger at another and say, you shouldn't do this. Right?
Yeah.
Why can't you do this? You're in a position to do this. But when you start looking at the other day you talk quick one. Abdullah, Dr. Ben Abdullah. Are you ready? Are you ready? She's serious, a professor, right? Abdullah, Professor, Dr. Yeah. Wonderful guy, right?
Yeah.
I see him as an excellent example of a politician. For me, that's how I saw him. I still see him now. I don't know what he's doing now. Jerry, you're talking about phenomenal Jerry was, right?
Yes.
Now, there are people who can sit with you. I mean, I have a brethren whose dad got shot in the firing squad thing when Jerry did the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This Jerry, before he passed, I heard, said that there was one of the men that got shot that day who was not guilty of anything. Because they say he seemed to be choosing people from a particular...
From different tribes, yes.
Yeah. So now, that's the idea of the political that I say to hell with. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if the guy is blameless, if someone's just performing his role and the person just happens to them, and is my dad, how do you expect me to see you as doing the right thing by him?
Yeah. It don't work like that. Yes.
Well, the politicians are a problem. That's a more fundamental problem, which we will discuss if we start talking about, like, say, we're going to discuss slavery, or we're going to discuss music.
We'll be discussing a whole lot of topics, Fire. And we are starting with
all these things, because I think you got your finger on it. Really, I just need to give you a chance to express yourself in more nuanced ways. I think because we're trying to push everything, limit everything within 30 minutes, 1 hour. Right now, it's 2 more minutes, right?
It's 2 more minutes. Yep.
Yeah, it's hard for you to really go all the way, and a lot of times, man, that's a problem with media.
Yeah. And that's why this is a series, Fire. That's why this is a series, good. Right? Exactly. And the thing is that what we're going to be doing is that we'll pick up from where we left off. So next week, what I'm proposing that we do is I'm going to invite Ras Mubarak on the show with us. Okay. Ras Mubarak has been a member of parliament in Ghana. He's also still running to be he's running to go back to parliament, and he has also served in other government offices. So we can actually have, I believe, a more nuanced discussion on, and not just say things and just leave it there to breathe, right? We'll have a real politician, so to speak, to, if you will, speak from their side of the aisle.
That'll be very interesting because he's got his hand. He's in the mix already, so you have things to say,
Yes.
I'm afraid a lot of things I will say will sound might sound irresponsible,
I'm sure he's ready.
That's how I stand. What you say?
I said I'm sure he's ready.
Yeah, but but I mean, what I'm saying, it may not be of use to him. I don't know. It may or may not, because I'm thinking about have other concerns, to put it that way.
We'll find out. When
I think about a woman in Choco, you know what I mean? When I think about
that woman has come up 4 times in this discussion. She is a hero.
I wish I could say what she was saying.
With the finger gestures that go with it.
Discourse. We should say that to, this conceptual framework that we've all been working
Fireside.
on,
Thank you very much, my brother. Thank you so much. Next week, God willing, everything being equal, we will bring this discussion back up and we'll be discussing what the best form of governance is for our beloved continent, Africa. And we will have, as usual, I believe, 7 Fireside regular. And then hopefully we'll be able to bring on Ras Mubarak as well. Maybe we can also bring on Empress Natika.
That would be great.
Empress Natika from France. She may also join us on next week's discourse. This has been Groundation on Radio Culture. I'm signing out. One love every time, people. And thank you, 7 Fireside.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Bless.
Yes, indeed, Radio Culture. This has been a riveting discussion with a man, 7 Fireside. Serious reasoning. Pidgenizing the narrative. Next week, like I said, we're going to be talking to same man, in addition to Empress Natika from France and Ras Mubarak, former member of parliament for Kumbungu in Ghana. Stick and stay. Don't turn off your radio. Stay right here on Radio Culture. We have more coming up. Stick and stay. But meanwhile, I personally...
As long as you're by my side, take on the world.